Because your voice is featured in the cockpits for various aircraft and even spacecraft, do pilots recognize your voice and say, "Hey, you're Bitchin' Betty"?
Occasionally, if it's a context, if I'm in a public context, that people would even start thinking, well, have I heard your voice before? I've heard your voice before a lot, but with pilots, the context would have to be more at an airfield, or if they were actual flyers themselves, military flyers. One thing that happens inevitably, if I'm doing like a something in public and invited to talk about what it's like being an actor, a voice actor, and all of this, there will inevitably be one or two guys hanging back from the crowd. When you see people hanging back after you've finished a presentation or your guest spot or whatever it may be, you know that they're hoping that they can speak to you. Thanks, you did a good job on tonight's show or whatever. And these will inevitably be pilots. These, great faces, rocky faces, like cowboys. And they'll have tears streaming down their faces.
Oh.
And I will just hug them and say, how did we spend our time together?
Oh.
Meaning, do you want to talk about a really scary time with Bitchin' Betty? That hits the hole in the soul that the wind blows through,
Yeah.
the common humanity. Also having had the great pleasure and privilege to entertain the troops at Christmas, in my long blonde hair, Gwyneth Paltrow days, for AFPEO, Special Services 7th Army. I just thought that's what every actor does. I just thought how we spend Christmas is entertaining the troops.
Of course, yes.
And I'm just starting to get an inkling of how special that is. It was a blast. We had a wonderful time doing all this. And lucky enough that the phone keeps ringing, and I'm very busy on mic, on stage, on film, teaching. So I think I'm about the luckiest person alive. And I just know on some level, my parents are just so relieved I was able to use my degree. It's like, oh my God, 4 years at a private school. And England, it's like, oh Lord, how will she ever work? But I'm very proud of being Bitchin' Betty.
How has being Bitchin' Betty impacted your life, as well as your career?
It's an odd feeling, because for the longest time, for decades, I couldn't tell anyone I was, and if I did, no one knew what that was. And then when refrigerators talk, your cars talk, everything starts talking, there's no connection with, well, someone had to be the first one. The place where it touches my heart, and it's not something I've ever used for marketing myself. After 9/11 simmered down, I would say that, yes, I was the original, and that's all I said, because you tell the truth. You always tell the truth. But the special feeling in your heart, and now Fly Girls, you have a connection with them, even if it's just to inspire the new people doing the call-outs. There has to be a first for something, and I'm the first. I'm lucky. I'm lucky. But I remember starting out in voice acting in Atlanta after coming from Huntsville. Our grant for the theater had ended, along with my first marriage, and it was time to get to a major market and do something else. Creating my first voice demos. There weren't women in the business. There simply weren't women in the business. It was a voice club. And engineering was totally separate from voice acting. Occasionally you would hear of a woman announcer, but only occasionally. And announcing is a special skill. It's not voice acting. It's one arrow in the quiver. And I knew I wanted to do more of this. I couldn't tell anybody who I was. So it was like, okay, so I'm going to pull copy out of magazines because it's in public domain. And I am going to go around and meet audio engineers and see where there's some chemistry, because I knew it was an expensive proposition, and my parents always said, hire the best people you can. Always hire people who are much better at what they do than you do.
Right.
And I met one of those great engineers in Atlanta, like the engineers in Muscle Shoals, who introduced me to the concept of good, fast, cheap. Pick two. If you want it good and cheap, it's going to take longer. If you want it good and fast, it's going to be expensive. I opted for good and cheap on my voiceover demo, and I showed him, well, here's what I've done. I've recorded with my cassette recorder. Okay, there's the technology then. Here are the scripts I've pulled. Here are my reads. I've been working with a tape recorder because there was no internet. There wasn't any Google. And I wanted to show him that I'd been working and I was dead serious about this. So we did it late at night so that the rates were cheaper, and it took a long time to do. But then I had tools to take around to all the production houses and say, okay, I'm a voiceover gal. And through the years, we voiceover artists, we're a funny bunch because you really don't have to wear makeup to do voiceover. You don't have to worry about wardrobe to do voiceover. And so it's very relaxing as opposed to any other stage call or film call. Film, you have to dress as the character would dress. Stage, you just have to look good and you look like you don't need a job. But voiceover, there would be one streak where I would be being hired because Kathleen Turner had a very high profile at that time, and she very, very sexy, sensual read. So I would do that. But the clients, if the clients were ever there, they're expecting someone who looks like Kathleen Turner, and here I come with a baseball cap on because we have to stay out of the sun. And they think, oh no, oh my God, we've made this horrible choice. How are we ever going to get the read we want for this cosmetic? Within 3 takes, they have it, and it blows their mind because the voice at that point didn't look like it sounded. So that's voice acting, and that's kind of fun. Anytime you work, you feel lucky and privileged to do what we do, especially for real deal for pilots and astronauts.
You sort of touched on this, but just to clarify, I guess. So, looking back on everything you've done, how do you view being the first woman to have her voice digitized? And is it still a big thing, or is it just another job well done?
It is a big thing to be the first. It's a big thing. Once again, lucky. Right place, right skill set, right everything, because it's continuing. And now it's a genre. Now it's a genre of these voice identification system, CAUSE. We have 4-letter acronyms for what I started. And toasters that talk. It's more of a very private satisfaction of, I did the gig, I did it well. Any good work has some hint of permanence or immortality, even if it's, say, stage work, even if it lives only in memory. Took it as far as I could take it, and other people are carrying it forward. Very proud and privileged. Happy to have done it.
If you could do a prank on some pilots with the audible warning system, of course, it would be in a simulator to make sure it was safe. Is there a cartoon character or a person that you would like to use to prank them?
First of all, I'd keep Bitchin' Betty because she's iconic. I don't know where these things ended up, but always when we had a session, as engineers and talent are wont to do, there would be funny things I would say, an outtake. I don't know where they ever ended up. It might have been just from one engineer to another. And I'll clean up the language on this because Sir Tyrone Guthrie said it best. An actor is someone who wears a cape, drinks too much, and uses incredibly bad language. So one of the early Bitchin' Betty things that I was asked to do as, quote, an outtake was bingo, fuel, kiss your butt goodbye. Bingo means you're out of fuel. And there were others. Take me to Miami. Take me to Miami. You know, fun stuff. So way ahead of the prankster curve. This was happening in the late 70s, early 80s.
Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share?
Thank you for being interested in the history of these incredible machines and the people who fly them. I appreciate what you're doing. Once again, thank you so much, and over and out.
Thank you, Miss Crow, for taking the time to tell us your amazing story. To our viewers out there, we'd like to thank you for spending this time with us today. If you're interested in more interviews by Combat Ace, feel free to visit our website, combatace.com, or check out more of our videos. Thank you for your time. I'm Anastasia Lee, signing off.